Wait a minute. Oh, hello. Okay, before we get started on our project, make sure that you get all the files and directories downloaded properly. In order for this Flask app to work, there is a very specific directory structure, and the files need to be in particular places. So when you first download the project file, it's in a zip called flask_project.zip. So here's how you're going to extract those files and create your working project directory. So click on the Flask project zip file and in a file explorer, and then click on the extract button at the top. So the extract, and that will show you the tools for extracting files. And you're just going to click on extract all, and it will pull up a screen asking you a destination to place your files. You can browse to a different folder if you would like. I'm going to unpack or extract all these files directly into my C drive, and this will create a new folder called flask_project, and that is it. Your files are ready to go. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, we have our test Flask app that we created, our bare bones. Let's go ahead and change a few things about this to draw the actual target HTML page that we're going to use for this tutorial. So inside of the route decorator, let's change the name of our function to home. And in the return render template, the argument to the render template function, let's change that to home.html. Go ahead and save that. Now, if you run your Flask app, and I'm going to run mine over here in the terminal like this, Python space main.py, and this works as long as you can run Python from this directory, and it's I'm in the directory where the main.py file exists, so that command will work just fine. Okay, so it looks like I've got success. It has run the app. I'm going to go over to my browser and refresh localhost :5000, and there we go. We've got make this bigger. We've got a website that says Oken's Law Calculator at the top. It's got a banner photo with some guy smoking a pipe. It's got an equation on it, and down here it has some entry boxes. It's got a start month and year and an end month and year, and then there's a couple of buttons here. There's an analyze button and a reset button. And then there's a section down below that just says scatter plot, but it doesn't have any information in it. Okay, so this is just the shell. This is our basic HTML page. None of these entry boxes or buttons do anything at the moment. You can press them and see it just redraws the sheet. So let's go ahead and write the Python code that will actually bring these features of the website to life, put some data in the sheet, and make it dynamic and interactive. Okay, so given that we have some information on the web page, that we have some entry boxes and some buttons, and we want to add some code to those items. And if you look inside of your home.html, and you can open up this file in any text editor, or if you're working in Spider like I am, you can go ahead and open up the file. So I'm inside of the home HTML, and there's not too much to this web page. You can see there's a small amount of code. But right about in the middle, there's this section called navbar. And the navbar is where those entry boxes and those buttons are. And inside of the navbar, this section is a div section. And it's got this line here. It says form method equals get. So we're assigning this get method to all of the items on this navbar. And we can use that word, that variable get, inside of our Python code to look for when a request is made that is a get type, meaning it was some information that was typed into one of the objects in our navbar. Then we can actually get that information in our Python program and do something with it. Here's how you do that. So let's enter some new some lines inside of our home function. And the first thing we want to do is go ahead and create an if request dot method double equals get. And typically variables are lowercase and things like that, but this the convention for the methods in HTML pages is to make them all uppercase. So there's different methods, get and post and various things. We leave those as uppercase. Okay, so if request method equals get, meaning that an activity has happened on one of those objects in our nav bar and has triggered that get method, then this goes and looks for it and finds out that something that was in that get method section has been triggered or activated. There's some information that we want to use. Okay, so there's two possibilities. So we want to handle first the reset button. So back in the web page, there was a button on the right, which was the reset button. And what the reset button does was it eliminated any information that had previously been typed into those text boxes. So we're going to enter the code that will go ahead and reset certain variables in our Python code if that button was pressed. So I'm just going to write a little note here, reset the dates. Okay. How will we know if the reset button was pressed? Well, we'll look if reset in request.args. Okay, so again, so we're already in the request method of get, and then we're looking within the arguments attribute of request to see if the reset is in there, meaning the reset button has been pressed. And if you look, I'm going to go back to our home HTML. You will see that there is a button down here at the bottom of our nav bar. You can see the name of that button right here is the reset button, and it is type submit. So it is activating some information and traveling back in. We're able to get that button was pressed with this argument here, reset in request.args. Okay, so if that is true, what do we want to do? We want to reset 4 variables that we're using in our program, and there's start month, start year, end month, and end year. And we're calling those variables, we're abbreviating like this. So start month is start_m, start year, and then end m, end y. So those are our variables. And we're going to reset those to 1 and 1900 and 12 and 2150. Okay, so in other words, we're setting our start month and year to January 1900 and our end month and year to December 2150 should the reset button be pressed. Okay, so if the reset button was not pressed, else we're going to go ahead and use the following code to get information from any of the boxes that may have information in them. So let's set start_m equal to request.args.get. And so the name of the box in our HTML is called start_m. And if there is no information in there and the reset button wasn't pressed, we still need to set a default value. So we're just going to set a default value equal to 1 here, and then set the type equal to int. Okay, so if the reset button wasn't pressed but there's no information in start month, we're just setting it to a default value of 1, which is, you can see, the same as it would have been had they reset it. I just noticed one other thing we need to change is in our import statement from Flask, we need to go ahead and get this request right there. Okay, so we can actually use that down here in our code. All right, I'm just going to copy this line because we're going to use this for all 4 of our date variables. So just copy the line start m and just paste it 3 times. And then let's just go through here and change. So the second one should be start year, and we change it here, here, and then we're going to change our year to 1900 for default. And then this third variable is going to be the end month, end_m. So let's change it there, change it there, and change it to 12. And then we have end year. End year. And our ending year is 2150. Okay, so just so you see how this ties into our actual HTML form. So again, we're inside of this if block that's testing to see if the request method is equal to get, and we are using the this get method, to get information from some items in our HTML, and the names of those items are here: start M, start Y, end M, and end Y. So let's look over in our home HTML, and in here you will see our fields. So start M, right? End M, start M, start Y, end M, and end Y. So those IDs are set to those values, and they're all inside of the form method get. Okay, so that will set all of our variables from any information that was entered into our web page. Okay, so now let's go ahead and generate the information, because what we want to do is inside of our get.py file. Let's go ahead and open that up and see what's in there. You'll see there is several different functions in here. There is this get data function, there's a make chart image function, and there is this scatter function. We're going to use this scatter function inside of our main.py in order to draw a scatter chart inside of our web page. And you can see that the scatter function takes 4 arguments. Look, this is the starting month, the starting year, the ending month, and the ending year. And then let's look and see what this scatter returns. So the scatter chart function returns 2 different things. It returns this thing called make chart image, and it returns a tuple with some information here. And this make chart image is actually it's not an actual chart. It is an image of the chart that was made with this function, make chart image, and it is a encoded in base 64 image of the chart that gets sent back to our main.py file, and that's what will get drawn on the website. For now, we're going to ignore the second argument, this tuple. We'll bring that into play a little bit later in the tutorial. Okay, so that's our scatter plot function. Let's go back over to main.py, and here's how we're going to generate the scatter plot and print it on our web page. So let's put a little note in here. Generate scatter plot and render on home page. Okay, we're going to define a variable here called scatter image, and we're going to set that equal to calling our scatter function. But in order to do that, we need to import the scatter function from our get.py file. So from get, import scatter. Okay, now we can go ahead and use the scatter function. And remember, the scatter function had 4 arguments to it: the start month, the start year, end month, and end year. And that function returned a tuple, and the image for the scatter chart was the first item in that tuple, if you remember back in the definition of that function. So we're going to just put index at 0 at the end of the function. So this will just pull the chart itself. It's not going to pull the tuple information that was part of that function. Okay, so now we've got our scatter image. We are going to go ahead and stop that, return, and we're going to use the render template method here, our function render template, and we're going to tell it where we want to render it. We want it home.html, and what we're returning is something called chart underscore image, and that is equal to, we're setting it equal to the object we just created, scatter image, and parentheses, oops, move that down here, and we'll say render the scatter plot to web page. Okay. So notice we've got 2 return render templates. One of them is inside of this if statement here. So this is where we're actually getting some information from the site, and that is where we are actually drawing the scatter image. But in any case, we're still returning, regardless of whether or not the request.method is set equal to get, we are still returning the actual page itself using the render template. So here we're returning it with the chart, because that means that there's some information to get. But here there's not necessarily any information to get. We're just returning the web page in general. Okay, so go ahead and save this. And let's go over to our web page. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh. Okay, so I went ahead and refreshed it. Now we can see we have a scatter plot on our web page that's drawn. Let's see if any of our entries on our nav bar work. So I'm going to change my start date to January, let's say 2000. So if I change that, I should see the title of this chart change, and I should see a difference in the chart data. So I've entered the year, and I'm going to click the Analyze button right here. Okay, so it redrew the page, and it definitely changed it. I saw the data moved, and we can see that the chart title is different. It now says on it that the data starts January 2000. Okay, let's go ahead and change our ending data. Let's end it. Let's change this to 7/2019 and click Analyze. Okay, so now you can see that the ending data, so we didn't enter any start, so it reverted back to the beginning. And our ending data here went to July 2019. And let's just check and see if the reset button works. Okay, and the reset button just reset it back to the entire data range. So we've got functionality from each of these little entries on our nav bar, and both of these buttons work. Okay, so we want to go ahead and add some additional functionality to our program. And one of the things I want to show you is, you may have noticed that every time you save and draw and refresh your page, the Flask app is printing messages on your in your terminal. Hopefully, if you have a terminal, you can see that. And you can't really print things inside of your Flask app in Python. Like if you wanted to check the value of a variable, if you were sort of debugging or working on your code, it won't print out there. You have to actually put those entries into the Flask logger, and you can print out the Flask logger. You can print things to the Flask logger and then view them in your terminal. So I'm going to show you how to do that, add some functionality. So use app.logger.info. We can print a message to that. So let's just enter a simple string saying test message. Save that. And let's go over to our web page and let's hit the reset button and see if we get a message over here. Okay, so if you look in my terminal right here, you can see that at 16:18:48 it logged a message. Here it says test message. And so now we can see we can print messages to our terminal from inside of our code to give us values. It would be useful maybe to get values of different variables, or to print messages of certain things were occurring to help understand the flow of your program. I'm just going to enter, let's see, a new line code in front of that. And let's do that again. I'm just going to hit the reset button on the web page. And there it is, test message. So it printed on its own line right there. Okay, so let's enter a useful message into our logger rather than just this string. So let's write a formatted string that says, let's have it enter the dates that were entered into the fields. So let's say getting data for range, and then we can do start month and start year dash, and then let's do end month slash end year. Okay, so I'll save that. I'll bring back the website back up. So now I'm going to go ahead and enter into the website some start and end date. So let's say we started at 4/1995 and ended at 12/2015. this a little smaller, and click the Analyze button. And so let's look in my terminal. You will see right here, it printed that line in the logger, getting data for range 4/1995 to 12/2015. Okay, so this code back over here, this app.logger.info, we can pass a string into the Flask logging system, and we can see it print out in sort of running messages that are happening while the app is active. Okay, let's add some more functionality to our website. So back over in the get.py, we had the ability to get some additional information from the scatter function. And what this is this returns some parameters that we are estimating in this function, in the line fit function. And if you are interested in finding out more about this, I have a tutorial on YouTube. If you can look it up. It's a Oken's Law Python tutorial. And in it, we talk about what this is, Oken's Law, and how you estimate the parameters. And I go through all the Python code we use. So we're actually just using these functions from that tutorial. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go check that out. But just know that there is some additional data that's coming back from this function in this tuple, and we can access it and we can print it out on our website. If we look in our home.html above the nav bar, we'll see that we have a place, excuse me, not above the nav bar, above our scatter plot down here, where we can print out a regression equation. And so we can make a regression equation from the information that's coming back from that tuple in our Python code and then send it into our HTML file. So in other words, we want our equation to print out on our web page. All right, so we need to alter our function here that sets scatter image equals to scatter, and we're just indexing the first item from that tuple. But let's go ahead and return everything. And so it's going to return both an image and it's going to return a tuple of regression information, and I'm just going to call that reg. And so reg itself will be a tuple. Let's go ahead and create a string using our regression information that we have. So let's say create regression equation. Okay, and so here's how we're going to do that. We are going to call it reg_eq. And we're going to set it equal to this very long formatted string. So bear with me on this, but I'll explain what each of these things does. So it's a formatted string, and it's going to be equal to the following. So lowercase d, uppercase u. That stands for the change in unemployment. And this right here, sub t, and then end sub. That is a way to make that T show up on our web page in HTML as superscript. So you'll see in a minute how that T will show up. So we put it in a little sub here, subscript marker. And so there's sub, and then it ends with the /sub. Okay, and we're going to set that equal to our regression equation using the information from this tuple called reg here. So we're going to access reg, and this is going to be index 1. That's where the intercept is in that tuple. We're going to format that for 2 decimal places floating, and I'm going to say plus. Now we're going to access that tuple again, reg at index 0, and we're going to format that for 2 decimal places floating. Now we're going to use the HTML code to do a multiplication symbol like this. It's ampersand times semicolon. That will print out on our page as a nice multiplication, like the X that's centered. And then we're multiplying it times lowercase d, uppercase y, and then we're going to use the sub feature again, sub t, end sub. That's how you say that, end sub with the /. Okay, and then we're going to create a break so we have another line. So in HTML, this break right there, that will put the next part on the second line. So this is very similar to the new line character, like when you're printing to the console in Python. The break will basically add a new line. Okay, and we're going to print r squared. Let me make this a little bigger. Equals space equals, and then we're going to pull from reg again item 2, and we're going to format that for, we're going to have a leading 0, and then we're going to do 0.4 fixed. Okay, so we've created this big long formatted string, and we saved it in this regression equation right here, regEq. So now what we want to do is each time there's entries and there's a recalculation happening in our Python code, when we render the template, we want to send that regression equation back to our web page, our HTML file, so that that equation will be printed in the section that we have set aside for the regression equation. And so here's how it's going to work. Regression equation equals regEq, the variable that we just created. And let me show you how this right here, regression equation, let me show you how this works. So if you look over in our home HTML page, right here we have a section for regression equation. And if you look inside of this code right here, it sets, this tells it what piece of information to get the actual string that we created. So right here, regression underscore equation, see that right there? That's letting it know that we're going to put that regression equation string right there, and it's going to go just above our chart, and it's going to go just below the nav bar. So it's going to be between the nav bar and the chart. Okay? All right, so let's save main.py. And let's go back over to our web page. And let's refresh our web page. Okay, so you can see we got our regression equation that printed out, and you can see that it filled in the parameters that came from the tuple, the 1.33, the negative 0.43, and this 0.5407. Those all came from the tuple that were delivered back from the scatter function from the imported get module. All right, so we've got basically all of the functionality of our website set up, and so hopefully you can see how we were able to get the information from the website and then dynamically send back information to update the website to reflect the information. And you can see how we're using Python code and running Python scripts within the Flask app here to deliver that content, to do calculations, and draw charts and things like that. All right, so we're almost done with our app. There's one last thing we want to add. We want to put in a passcode validation so that if the user doesn't enter a proper passcode at the end of their URL, they can't access the site. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We need to go ahead and import a new entity here. So from Flask, let's add to the end here, we want to also import the abort. Okay, abort. All right, so here's how we're going to create this. I'm just put a little tag here, middleware to validate user prior, let's just say validate user. Okay, so before the user can access our website, we have to validate them, and they're going to have a secret phrase that will be part of their URL in order to access our website. So let's set what that phrase is, and we're going to call that valid underscore passcode, and let's set it equal to Carolina. That will be our passcode. Okay, so we're going to make a new decorator here. So let's we're going to use the app.beforeRequest. Okay, and let's give ourselves some space here, and let's go ahead and define our function before requests. Okay, so the first thing we're going to test is to see if the request is coming from, or is coming to try and access something from our static folder. And we don't want to necessarily require a passcode for that, because our own program in HTML is going to be making requests to the static folder, because that is where we have our styles, our CSS styles, and also any images that are displayed on the site. So we just want the passcode to apply to accessing the home page of our site. So we're going to say if request.path, and we're going to use starts with. So remember that that's a string method, starts with. And if it starts with /static, Okay, that means that it's an element of our own app that's trying to access one of the files in our static folder. So we don't need to hold ourselves to the standard of having to give the secret passcode each time it accesses a style, for example, from the CSS. So if that's true, we're just going to go ahead and return. Okay, so we're not testing the passcode in that case. But if let's go ahead and set a variable here, passcode equals, now we're going to use the method here. We're going to request args and get, and we're going to get passcode. So this is going to be like a keyword argument. So when the URL is entered, the way you would enter it would be passcode equals Carolina, for example. So this line of code is saying to look in the request in the URL, the arguments, and the URL gets broken up into different arguments, and we're getting the passcode argument here to test it against the true passcode. So if passcode is not equal to a valid passcode, then we are going to call the abort function here, and we're going to give it the abort code of 401, which would be an access denied code. So the browser will know that we denied access to the website. Okay, that looks like that's good to go. Let's go over to, let's save that. And let's take a look at our website. And so it's already set to localhost 5000. Let's refresh it and see what happens. Okay, so that's what a 401 abort code gets you. Unauthorized. It says the server could not verify that you are authorized to access the URL requested. We denied access. Now watch what happens if I go up into my URL here, and I'm going to add a passcode, question mark, passcode, and let's set it equal to Carolina, which is our passcode in this case, Carolina. Okay, so now you can see that it's now giving us access to our website. And let's just test it to see if that affected any of our functionality. So let's, for example, change our starting year maybe to 2001 and click Analyze. Okay, so we're still able to access, run all the functions, and redraw the chart. Okay, so that does it for this tutorial. Hopefully that gave you a good sense for how to use Flask to create your own web application, and how to use Python and how it brings Python, HTML, CSS, and media files all together in your web app.